We're here today to introduce you.
Joe and I had the pleasure of working with KG over the summer at Governor School for the Arts.
We both serve as on staff, and as many of you may find familiar, we quickly connected with KG. I simply don't think KG has ever met a stranger. This incredible young woman has a way of connecting with others through her own vulnerability. She is empathetic and cares so deeply about every person she meets.
Within the first day or two of meeting KG, by our second interaction, I think, I knew the name of each of her cats and essentially most of her life story, and she knew all about my relationship with my parents and how I got into theater. This was like a 15-minute conversation max. That's because KG is one of the most open and honest people I've ever met. It's not just that KG is open, but she has a way of making that honesty rub off on other people. The only way I can think to put it is KG is infectiously authentic. She has a way of making you feel instantly like you could be you.
And that's not just us. We observed her forming vast bonds with her peers, instructors, and the other staff members. Most people who come into contact with KG leave feeling ignorant. KG, even when she is not present at a crime, she is constantly making others around her feel better.
KG has a way of knowing where someone is and needing a man.
She is a gifted student, an extremely talented performer, but more importantly than that, she is one of the most authentic, loving, and genuine people I know.
We are both so proud of you, KG, and can't wait to see what you do.
Now enough of us talking.
One of the most beautiful things about childhood is growing up in a fantasy world through the stories we read. Through books, movies, and art, we become more creative and intellectual. We identify with characters, and those characters can shape our morals and core values. Where the Wild Things Are taught me how to identify anger and learn to control it. The Hungry Caterpillar represents the virtue of self-control because we can indulge in things that make us feel bad afterwards. Through the Giving Tree, we learn gratitude, generosity, and love. Although I read all these stories growing up, the story that has truly shaped me into the person I am today is Spirit and Uncommon. The point by Harry Nilsson is a movie, but what I love most about it is the soundtrack. Not only did it help me become me, my mom grew up listening to it, as well as my cousins, and my great aunt with music during her teaching career. And that family connection has kept me connected to music over the years. The story is as follows. A boy named Oblio lives in the Pointed Village in the land of Point. Everyone who lives in the Pointed Village has points upon their head, except Oblio, who is round-headed. Oblio is an ostracized for his uniqueness and banished to the Pointless Forest, which he soon found out was not pointless at all because everything in the Pointless Forest also had a point. Through his journey, he encounters a multitude of characters that help him to realize, despite his lack of point, he himself must have one. The central idea to the story is acceptance, and I was raised the same way, to accept myself and others. But there are little lessons throughout the story which impact my mindset to this day. Something I have prided myself on for a while now is that I stand by my morals and I do everything in my power to not sacrifice them at the comfort of others. From a young age, I was a happy-go-lucky kid. I wanted to take most things personally, and I was super go with the flow. I also thought that everyone was raised just like me. They were taught to stand up for themselves and others when they needed, and they lived around the golden rule: treat others as you would like to be treated. I lived in bliss up until the summer of 2020, when I began to see some of the corruption in our society. People were protesting in the streets, and I too was seeing injustice for the first time. Then I found the societal corruption in the world that helped me become me, the Pointed World. The first song in the album, Everything's Gone, made me convert a new message, and I listened to it. The lyric goes, "This is the town where the people all stay, that's the way they wanted it, that's the way it's going to stay." Hinted that the people of the town have created the society that they want to live in, which made me realize that you individually and you collectively have created the place we all live in. So where we live should be benefiting everyone. By having a mindset of, that's the way they wanted it, that's the way it's going to stay, leaves no room for change, and all the Oblios of the world continue to feel ostracized. In order to be treated as a human, in Oblio's world and in ours, you must fit into a certain category, and most people do not, since there is a small number of people who are not oppressed in some fashion. Forcing people into categories only makes those who don't fit into an easy category think there's something wrong with them physically, or with their personality, or their background. When I first watched the protest in the streets, I was worried. I believe that people try to be good law-abiding citizens. However, to be a good law-abiding citizen, you must have good laws. Good laws make the society we live in fair to everyone. So if you think the law isn't fair, you have the right to change it. But public protest can be scary, and standing up for what you believe is a risk. It is easier to see injustice and ignore it than to hear false information and not correct it. Especially at a young age like ours, it's hard to have moral integrity at the risk of popularity. I've learned that you can live in fear and conform to your environment, or you can be your own person. That is something that the people of the land of Point lack. They are so accustomed to their small world, they don't know how to see outside of it. When you're involved in one small community for so long, the world outside it seems unfathomable because our reality is altered. It's important to understand that large-scale problems exist in small communities too. So if something seems unfair, it is our society, therefore we must be empowered to make it better. One of the characters Ophio and Arrow meet along their journey is the Rock Man, who told them, the thing is, you see what you want to see, and you hear what you want to hear. This mindset is how I protected my peace this past year. Most of us have set political policies, leaders, and what news sources we trust to get our information, which are always we give into this notion. And sometimes we don't like people based on what other people have told us, instead of making opinions for ourselves. While I believe we make the best choices based on the information we have at the time, more often than not, we make the choice to disregard the information that does not support what we already believe. It makes me wonder how many of you see what you want to see and hear what you want to hear, instead of looking at the whole picture. All in all, looking at the world through a black and white lens is a very easy thing to fall victim to, especially because most people have desire to feel right, or feel like they have wanted something. But opening my eyes to shades of gray and not looking at life as a competition has helped me to see life as something full of fun experiences and a thing to enjoy. Whenever I am feeling anxious or overwhelmed, I listen to The Point. My lullaby that my Nana or my mom would sing to me is Think About Your Troubles. I love this song because it is about how everything eventually circles back around. At first, you're sitting, drinking tea, and crying because you're processing your emotions, and your teacup fills up with tears. You take those tears and you toss them into a river. That river leads to an ocean, and that ocean water has fish living. Those fish are eaten by bigger fish who are then eaten by a whale. And then this whale dies and its body decomposes into the ocean floor, which gives the ocean water its natural elements and makes the sea water taste like salty water, which tastes like tears. That sea water, or the salty water, is run through a filter into a teapot and you're back to the tea. The whole song represents sorrow, life and death, and the inevitability of processes and experiences. Remembering that life is a circle helps keep me grounded for every experience and avoid getting into frustration. I also know that if I do get overstimulated, I have a system that helps me keep my peace and continue to work diligently. As I finish the speech, I'd like to return full circle to how I began. Childhood encourages us to live and learn in a fantasy world. Adults must learn to make the real world the best that it can be, and if we need to return to the music or books or hopes and dreams of our childhood to keep us grounded in the good, then I'm grateful we have those stories. Thank you.
Our second speaker today is Lainey Wood. Lainey will be introduced by Dr. Sal.
Good morning. Good morning. When I grow up, I want to be Lainey Lloyd. Lainey is a rare combination at 18. She possesses the wisdom of an old soul and a passion of vitality that we love to identify as hallmarks of youth. I aspire to live life as she does. I'd like to think that to some degree I'm already there. Lainey's receptivity to literature is an obvious example. The other day I read a passage of a novel in class and Lainey was so moved that she seemed to be holding back tears. I fully empathize. I think it's safe to say that for both of us, great writing is a living thing that kicks and nurtures the soul, that enriches and softens the heart, that shatters and expands the mind. In this regard, I think I've already earned 5 stars in Club Lainey. More broadly, I think Lainey possesses a similar sensitivity to life itself, and that she intuitively views life as the ground for coming. I don't know about coming, what are you talking about? I'll try to explain. Many Americans, as Henry David Thoreau would say, lead lives of quiet desperation. We tend to live in our heads, brooding on the past or anticipating the future, living as if personal fulfillment is to be achieved down the road after certain milestones are reached or feats have been accomplished. This habit leaves us blind to the present moment, and consequently without access to deep calm, the spontaneous delight in our surroundings and possibilities. Although she is a remarkably diligent student, Lainey has the ability to savor the moment with an open mind and heart. Whether it be a great passage from Sherwood Anderson, tulip buds in Cahill Cemetery, or the many opportunities of singing Passion Project, Lainey lives with a present moment awareness and receptivity that enable her to truly appreciate the varieties of life and awaken to her full potential. In this regard, Lainey reminds me of my own spiritual journey and recovery from my work-obsessed, future-oriented habits. In short, I feel validated and inspired by Lainey, and I happily introduce her for her speech.
Hey everyone! So, I tried to come up with something really cool and surprising about me for my senior speech. Something that would totally shock all of you and open your eyes to a new side of me that you've never seen before. But, as I drafted and brainstormed for this speech, I realized something that most of you already know. I'm an open book. With me, what you see is what you get. And, as I cannot suppress my nerdy obsession with literature, I'm going to talk to you all about Shakespeare. Now, please don't run and close your ears just yet, because I promise to make this interesting. Some of you all may know that I spend much of my free time acting in Commonwealth Theatre Center, and every spring I perform in our annual Shakespeare Festival. Since the 4th grade, I have been unnaturally obsessed with the metrics, verse, and language of Shakespeare's writing. Some seniors may remember that in the 8th grade, I was in Shakespeare's The Winter's Tale, because Miss Lever gave extra credit to anyone who came to see me. I particularly remember several of my classmates witnessing me wipe out in the middle of our poorly choreographed folk dance. The Winter's Tale is a particularly fascinating anomaly to all of the bard's devout followers due to the two contrasting halves. The first half of the play follows the format of a tragedy, due to the wrongful death of the Queen Hermione and abandonment of her daughter Perdita. In contrast, the second half of the play is clearly a comedy, filled with dancing, marriage, and humor. During this part of the play, I acted as a drunken, dancing prostitute named Mopsa, probably not the highlight of my acting career. How do you categorize a play like The Winter's Tale? This question sparks stark debate and controversy between Shakespeare enthusiasts such as myself, and is solved by a grab-bag category of misfit plays referred to as romances. The Winter's Tale is one of 4 romances that don't neatly fit into the box of a history, comedy, or tragedy. But that's what I like about it. In my personal experience, joy and sorrow are not mutually exclusive experiences, and just like in The Winter's Tale, some of my most beautiful moments have come with tragedy. Throughout the rehearsal process of my theater's rendition of The Winter's Tale, my own personal tragicomedy began to unravel in tandem with the nature of the show. Now, upon asking my family, friends, and teachers their first impressions of me, I believe most would comment on my positive and cheerful attitude. And when my dad first received the diagnosis of stage 4 terminal brain cancer, many of those family members, mentors, and peers assumed my self-defining psychic disposition had disappeared. During a year where most of my friends spent their weekends bonding over soccer games, having slumber parties, or shopping at the mall, I often spent mine waking up to the familiar feeling of not straining my neck from sleeping on the stiff couch in my dad's hospital bedroom. My mom and I tried to make the space as homey as possible. On Valentine's Day, we made a collage of photos for the walls and got my dad a dearly beloved squishmallow. But unfortunately, no amount of photos, solar system puzzles, or fairy lights can camouflage the bleak reality of linoleum floors and forever lighting. As we moved out of my childhood home and into a blank, unfurnished apartment, the setting served as a backdrop for countless essays, math problems, and projects, all done on the side of the hospital's frozen Italian ice, the one outside of the dismal building. By the start of freshman year, I was excited for a change of pace. Some would call me a tad over-enthusiastic, but by the first day of school, I had pored over the course catalog and planned ways to take every single history elective by the end of high school. I'm sorry to say that AP Psych and Euro eluded me, but beside that, my younger self would be proud of the obscene amount of history credits I will graduate with. That is to say, I reveled in the new academic environment of high school. In Ms. Keir's class, I wrote and rewrote my first argumentative essay on the glass castle, and even with a million grammar errors, further ascertained my writing voice with each edit. I took my job of feeding words to Mr. Carr's axolotls very seriously, in rest in peace. And after learning SOHCAHTOA in Miss Prince's geometry class, I took great pleasure in cutting my grilled cheese sandwiches into special right triangles. My school day greatly contrasted my home life, which was filled with hospital beds, IVs, and hospice nurses. Still, I couldn't help but find pockets of joy everywhere. Over the holidays, my friends and I would use my building as our own personal playground. The layout of my apartment floor, two connected rectangles, formed the perfect racetrack. So, we mounted my dad's various wheelchairs as our noble steeds and spent hours racing in circles around our makeshift track until inevitably crashing and falling into a pile of laughter. At night, my family and I watched The Mandalorian, commenting on the cuteness of Baby Yoda while feeding my dad grape sherbet, one of the only foods he could tolerate. At this point, my dad's illness often brought out an odd sort of morbid comedy. One of the only ways he could take direct action over his life, weirdly enough, was online shopping. Despite his odd, delirium-induced purchases, my mom and I did not feel it was ethical to lock him out of the Amazon account. That year, our Christmas gifts consisted of about 30 tubes of tennis balls, an entire box of squirrel-themed mugs, and hundreds of small packets of demi-glaze, which, if you don't know, is the sauce you put on cooked meats. Even in the tragedy of the situation, my mom and I looked around at the bizarre gifts in front of us and couldn't help but suppress our giggles. The same kind of tragic hilarity arose when my dad randomly insisted that we invite a priest over to the apartment. Despite our record-low church attendance, he had an inkling that the Catholics were right about the afterlife and wanted to be converted immediately. I suppose he definitely didn't want to make the wrong choice concerning that. My dad passed away just a few weeks before the entire world went into lockdown. It was a very odd experience feeling such personal grief, compounded by the universal loss which everyone felt at the time. And yet, oddly enough, the restrictive confinement that the pandemic required also brought me and my mom much needed time for processing and connecting with one another. During lockdown, we finally had time to go through our storage, finding clothes and important items we hadn't seen in years. We got the chance to decorate our apartment, finally making it feel like home. After a year and a half of constant movement, COVID restrictions actually brought us a moment of rest and peace that allowed me and my mom to reconnect with ourselves and with each other. So, now when I read or watch The Winter's Tale, I'm reminded of the beauty that makes it such an outcast. The play's stark emotional contrast convinces me that no story should be organized into a neatly bordered genre. Boxes deprive readers of the full story. I would not feel so much joy in watching Perdita's marriage to the Prince Florizel if he had known that she was a princess from the start. In my refusal to allow others to define my narrative of grief, I make room for the hilarity and small joys that always counter unexpected tragedy. So, in my opinion, categorize The Winter's Tale however you wish, because the play will inevitably speak for itself. Now that senior year is here and flying by quicker than I could have ever imagined, I greet every moment of heightened stress as potential for a moment of equally heightened joy. For every painstaking, argumentative essay, I get to dance my heart out with my English class to the sweet sounds of Doc Saville's cowbell. For each biology test, I'm granted another hour of Mr. Carr's rants and terrible jokes, that never failed to make Marie laugh to the point of tears. For every grueling hike to the art room for advisory, I get the pleasure of hearing Jacob and Mr. Mahoney playing the guitar, or watching Jackson, Henry, and Wills yell at the TV watching old Arsenal soccer highlights. So, when people ask me how I can have such a positive disposition all the time, I often wonder, how couldn't I? No matter how good or bad, every day is filled with pockets of joy that make life worth living. I want to remind the underclassmen in the room that high school is difficult, and you will undoubtedly experience times of hardship throughout, whether academic or personal. But try not to forget all the joys, big and small, that make this community so special. I promise those moments are infinite if you're taking the time to look. Thank you. Our final speaker today is Ellen Hancock. Ellen will be introduced by her sister, Alice Logan.
This is still terrifying. Great job, y'all. And I feel like this will should be after me on. Hi. I'm Thomas O'Brand, Ellen's very proud sister. I had the pleasure of getting to watch Ellen grow from an adorable little baby. I could dress up like a doll, to a beautiful, mature, poised, intelligent, strong young woman who is about to speak in front of our entire school. As impressive as she is as a student, sister, and a friend, I've been most amazed to see Ellen become the world's best friend. She has become an ally, a buddy, a role model, and a frequent ice cream provider to my two young daughters, and I hope that some of her amazing qualities rub off on me. I feel confident in speaking on behalf of our entire family today. Ellen, we are so proud of you as a person and at all that you have accomplished. I'm in awe of you and can't wait to see what you do next. And now,
Unless you grew up as an only child, it's likely that the bulk of your first memories may include a sibling or two. In my case, my first memories include 5 siblings. Whether it's sharing baths or taking your first trip to the beach, growing up with someone close in age means having someone to live through the important moments with. These shared experiences make up a huge part of the sibling bond. For me, I love being a part of their family. My dad was married once before he met my mom, and in this marriage he had 2 kids, Alice and Buzz. When he married my mom, he had 4 more children. William, Sam, Charlie, and myself. Yeah, 6 kids. Growing up, I would be asked how many siblings I had. Most of the time, my response would be somewhere along the lines of, I have 5 siblings, and people would look at me like I had 2 heads. I know we're not supposed to have favorites in a family, but my older sister Collis was without a doubt mine. My sister Collis is a celebrity in my eyes, and I aspired to be just like her when I grew up. I always had a dream as a kid that I was going to grow up and go to culinary school in Paris, just like my sister did. I went through the baking phase in middle school, where I was obsessed with baking and delicious treats and convinced myself that this was just the beginning of my career. I even got my first job in a well-known cookie shop, Humble Cookies, during my junior year because I thought it was something I really wanted to pursue. Let's just say I only stayed in that job for 6 months. The only thing that kept me there were the free cookies, and my dreams of becoming a professional chef were shattered on my first day on ovens when I pulled a scalding hot pan out of the oven and burned myself. The scar still lingers, as well as the trauma from that job. Let's just say, while I may still be an incredible baker, culinary school, which most likely not only be. Alice and I are 18 years apart, and sometimes this age difference proved to be quite tricky. When I was younger, it was difficult to make memories and spend quality time with her, because first she was in college, then she lived in Chicago, and I rarely saw her. She was off living her best life, and don't get me wrong, I could not be more proud of her, but I miss my sister all the time. I still remember the sleepovers we would have when she would come to town, where I would sacrifice my own sleep for my sister. She slept in my bed while I slept on my queen-size sleeping bag on the floor. I choose to do so without bribery, but I have no clue what 8-year-old was thinking about giving up her nice necklace for the full bar quote. There are so many reasons why I love my sister. I love her smile, I love her laugh, but most of all, I love the memories we share. My earliest memory is extremely vague, and honestly, I think the only reason I have any recollection of it is because there's a photo of it stuck on an apron that was gifted to my dad a while back. In the said photo, I was grinning ear to ear, and my entire face was smudged with pink icing. I went over to my sister's mom's house and we made what I'm assuming was a strawberry cake with strawberry icing. It must have been delicious because it was all over my face, and anything my sister makes is delicious. It was also around this time that we came up with our secret handshake. While I can't break the sister code and share it with anyone, just know it's pretty good. Arguably, the best part of being a little sister is being the flower girl at your big sister's wedding. I remember the day like it was yesterday. The days leading up to it were almost as exciting as the real day. I got my dress, and it was really cute. It was a white dress with a blue stripe on the front. And the day before the wedding, we had a rehearsal dinner. As a little girl, it was quite difficult to listen to the speeches about how the bride and groom were a couple and they loved each other and whatever. But the best part came towards the end of the night. One of my sister's best friends, Erin, invited me to come stand up with her while she was giving her speech. And at the end, I had a special surprise for my sister. Erin gave her speech, and when she was finished, she passed the microphone to me, where I proceeded to say, "I love you, Collis," loud and proud for all to hear. I got lots of applause, and I think I made Erin's speech much more memorable. On the wedding day, I got to get ready with the big girls, and that's all I talked about for days. I got my hair done with my sister at her bridal party, and then I got to ride with them. The ceremony was so fun, and I walked down the aisle like I owned the place. Obviously I didn't, but the best part was the reception. I danced the night away, and it was that night that I discovered my love for chocolate photograph. It was arguably the best I love. In 2016, when I found out that my sister was moving back to Louisville with her husband, I was ecstatic. I would finally be able to see my sister as often as I wanted and build more and more memories with her. She bought a house only 5 minutes away from me. Now she lives 30 seconds away from me. After she moved back, we had girls' days all the time. We had many outings to 211 Clover and Drama. And when she moved back home, she also started her own family. I remember the day that she told me and my siblings that she was expecting her first baby girl. I was over the moon becoming an aunt. I told everyone, and I mean everyone I knew. If you knew me in 7th grade, I profusely apologized for the number of times I brought up the fact that I was an aunt, because it's basically her personality. My first niece, Dawson, was born on February 7th, 2018, and when I say I was crazy about her unit, I made her a whole scrapbook over her first year. A couple of years later, my second niece, baby Collis, was born. She was about 6 months old, and COVID had been restricted. I spent every weekday morning with her from 9 to 1. With my sister's 2 kids, I've been able to continue the tradition of having girls' days. And while getting sushi's fun, we most often find ourselves at Target, the toy section, in which they both know my soft spot, and almost every time I cave in, I think they're in my wallet. When you have a sister, you're almost guaranteed to have someone by your side no matter what life throws your way. When I had surgery a couple weeks ago, Collis was always the first one to offer me help. She delivered those beautiful flowers and brought her little girls over for some much needed stuff. I still feel awful about the fact that I agreed to babysit her girls 3 times a week and then ended up having surgery. It's okay. She was very forgiving, even though I miss my de-stressor, chasing her kids around the house with candy bars, or maybe Collis screaming at the top of her lungs that she got it when offered any sort of help. But seriously, guys, Collis is the best sister anyone could ask for, because she's always there to make life more fun, make delicious food, and the most important part is that she gave me keys and stuff. It's important to have the people we love unconditionally. Often those people are family, and often we take our family for granted. In the next few months, I will move on from collegiate, just as my sister did 18 years ago. While I'm slightly scared to go off on my own, I know that I will always have my sister by my side for anything I could ever need. Collis, thank you for the memories, the laughs, the advice, loving me unconditionally, and everything else. While we may not have had the traditional sibling experience, I could not be more grateful to have a sister like you. Thank you.
Let's give our speakers another round of applause.
completely because they were like, well, counting 1S, 2S, 2P, they were counting, so you don't have to count it. Do that, into that keyword, go back to 4S, 3S, or whatever. Once they got that.
That's on the. Sure, feel free to ask. When you hear review next class.
I've got extra for next class.